everybody. Can everybody hear us okay? We're in a different setting today. We're all together, social distance, but we're all together. And we've also got Hayley here as well, who's going to be managing everything. Can we just get some chat to say that the sound's okay? Yeah, we're looking good, looking good. Well, any of you who logged on last month, you'll probably be please expect the same level of chaos as last month. But really, this is only going to work if we get feedback from you guys. So, really do encourage you to pop questions, not in the chat, but there's a questions section below this screen here. And what we're going to do is, we're going to talk generally, but we're also going to look for feedback on the subjects we talk about. So this is aimed at the commercial drone sector. It's not aimed in any way at the hobbyist sector or consumer sector, because that's not our business. You know, we're focused B2B commercial sector, and predominantly UK and Ireland, but it does go out to other markets across the world as well. So, just going to talk first off about, obviously, COVID-19. It's affected us all. We talked about it last month, and you know, we wonder what you guys are seeing out there. How is it affecting your business, and is it changing? Most importantly, I think one thing that we've seen, especially last week in June onwards, is that the market seems to have sparked into life, and we've had a paradigm shift in activity, in inquiries, in sales, in students booking courses, in all areas really, in large organisations getting their drone strategy back online. George, what in the inspection sector, what have you seen?
Especially since sort of even prior to COVID-19, I think the inspection industry has really been taking a huge step towards the renewable sector. So, and you will see for the next sort of 12 months is the emergence of potential jobs and contracts for the wind industry in particular. So we're seeing a lot of the offshore and even onshore wind inspection jobs coming up, and you know, with more opportunities and more maintenance jobs that are coming out, we're going to see a lot more opportunities in that sector, which is great for the UK, especially with the likes of the East Anglia projects, which are coming on over the next couple of years, and potentially even the opportunity of delivering tools and spare parts to these areas, which are quite difficult to reach. So, especially for the inspection side and maintenance areas, the wind and renewables is a massive industry, which is only going to grow. So that's what we're seeing a lot of at the moment.
And I like the new phrase that you brought there. I think you should bring it. It's the windustry.
The windustry.
Yeah. I like
that's
that.
The one.
New phraseology there for that sector. Sam, what about in the public safety arena?
Yeah, so we've seen there's two kind of areas where there's been a fair bit of growth in the past month off the back of things getting back to normal with COVID. So within the public sector, police are looking at improving the drone capabilities they already have to make them more efficient so they can operate more frequently. So we've seen them coming to us looking at upskilling for training, getting more accessories and spares and spare batteries, servicing equipment so they're ready to sort of get rocking and rolling when everything's back to normal. But also we've seen more demand from private security companies as well to start using drones more. So stuff like surveillance on building sites, which now maybe aren't active constantly 24/7, so need more security. But also looking at remote security for things like sporting events and large events where people do start to gather back together, hopefully in September, October time. The security then is going to be unmanned rather than having patrols, because the less people you can put in the situation, the better. So yeah, it's starting to bounce back up. Public safety, they aren't investing heavily in new technology at the minute, but they're upgrading a lot of what their current capabilities, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, are we getting anything, Haley, regarding on that subject in the questions? Because that will be interesting to hear from people in that area.
Not really. There's a question about autonomous drones on 4G and 5G network and how scalable is this?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I have to admit I'm not an expert on 5G and what it's going to mean, but have you guys seen? There's big talk about what 5G is going to mean for the drone industry, isn't there?
Yeah, it's going to take a few. I think it's going to take a few big innovative companies to start working more on stuff like AI for autonomy to truly come in. Because if the AI isn't up to spec, then autonomy is not going to work. So that'll be the next big jump. Is the big.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen like with the M300, all the AI specs that are built into that.
Yeah.
AI is the next big thing. That's going to give autonomy.
It's kind of squeezing that lemon, isn't it? The capability, the technology is there. It's being able to use it to its max, and I think 5G is going to be part of that answer.
Absolutely, it's the evolution of drones and the fact that the more consumer side, they were doing swarms over in China. We've seen that all over the news over the last couple of years, and they've moved it into the industrial commercial side. So it's just the next progressive stage is to start using it in an industrial urban area.
So a couple of news items that I've seen in the last few days. One of them being StoreDot, an Israeli company, who, when we talk about autonomous drones, they claim to have a 5-minute recharge system using an autonomous, basically docking landing station, charges the drone in 5 minutes and back up out. Now, that's a game changer. If that's right, and we can do that. That is a game changer, and for security and probably military applications as well, and indeed inspection on large sites. We don't know much more about that. We don't know how much of a prototype it is, but it certainly is going the way of autonomous drones. And you were talking, Sam, about the police and public safety. I noticed that the Kent police have been using their drones to stop illegal cockle picking. So it's that's one to add to the list of use cases. Have you seen any more interesting, different use cases in the public safety sector?
Yeah, we've seen a few. So I mean, just on that, it's kind of showing, although it's not kind of a bit tongue in cheek, but it's kind of showing that it's bleeding down from, you've got your big stuff like counter-terror use of drones and large event safety use of drones, but they're becoming more and more commonplace, and forces can now afford to use them for things that are a little bit less serious like that. But it's saving money, it's saving time, it's making it safer, when normally, although it sounds trivial, chances are they have to send some officers out to do that. So it's just less risk. Some other interesting stories that have come out this week on drone use with the police. There's something from West Midlands Police. They got a call out for 2 teenagers that were apparently carrying machetes somewhere in the Black Country. They managed to arrest one of them, but the other one ran away. They chased them on foot for a while. They got them in sort of like basically a school playground, and knew they were somewhere in there, but couldn't find them. So they put a Mavic Dual drone up and scanned the area, and they found them lying on the roof of the school building, sort of flat down on the roof, so no one could see them from the ground. But they picked them up on the thermal image, and then the drone pilot spoke on the radio to a dog team who got the dog up and around by them. And obviously, as soon as they know there's a dog there, they give themselves up because they don't want to get chased by a dog. So, the chances are either they could have called a helicopter out to spot them, which would have cost them a couple of £1,000 as a minimum, just for that one call out. That probably wouldn't have happened. They'd have just not been able to capture them. So that was a real example, again, of where either, depending on how you look at it, they're saving a huge chunk of money, or they're just arresting someone which they previously might have missed.
Yeah, so you hear things like that, and it's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it, for police operations and what it can do. And I've seen it been on the telly, the police responders when they've been catching people in, I think it was an old disused warehouse complex. But how is it going to be until there's a drone in the boot of every police car?
Yeah, I mean, to put that into context, West Midlands Police have 22 pilots. Obviously, that's a huge area to cover with just 22 pilots. So the chances are, with that story, that was almost luck, that they had a pilot there with a drone that could do that. If they didn't have someone there, they would have missed it. So that's always going to be the target, is to be able to have every unit within the police force to have at least some sort of drone capability.
Yeah.
And maybe with a larger system that can be deployed for pre-planned operations alongside that. I think at the moment it's just getting the budgeting to move forward to a point where nationally they're going to have enough drones to have that coverage. At the minute, it is just, as I said, effectively look, is there a pilot that's on call, that's available with a drone for that specific call out?
Yeah. Okay, so have we got any general questions there?
There's one here from Gerard Morgan. He's asked, from a policing point of view, obviously crowded events are non-existent, but UAVs are being used for ASB and MISPA searches. Will technology be cheaper in the future for search and rescue and public safety in general?
I think if you're talking hardware, then a great example of technology being cheaper is the new Parrot drone, the Anafi USA. So if you'd have come to us even 6 months ago and said you wanted a drone with a high resolution thermal, 32 times zoom, IP53 rating that can fly in 15 meters a second wind, we'd have said, well, have you got £25,000 to spend? Because that's what you're going to have to spend to get a drone that can do all that. So for MISPA search in bad conditions, with a cheaper drone, you're grounded. But now that system, you know, £6,500, £7,500 as a package, you could tick all those boxes. So it's becoming more accessible. There's also stuff like we're doing our free emergency services drone training as well. So we're making the training side of it and getting qualified more accessible. So yeah, it's going the right way. So yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's just, as Steve said earlier, it's getting enough drones in so that there's always someone available to do the work.
Another question on policing. Are the police engaging with private companies to carry out drone activities?
The best answer to that is some are. So even the drone teams that are perceived as larger, so the police forces have a large drone presence, like West Midlands, again, only have 22 pilots. So there are cases when those pilots aren't available, or when they don't have equipment or a skill set at a certain level. So I know that some forces do have contractors and do bring pilots in. The best thing to do if you're interested in that is to contact the police force directly and just offer your services effectively. And there's always search and rescue organisations, volunteer organisations that are looking for drone pilots as well.
Yeah, how many of them have we got in our Copters Academy at the moment?
Hundreds.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I think we're approaching 300 that we've trained up that are search and rescue, nurse services. Yeah.
You know, and you know, these charity search and rescues, they do an amazing job, and you only have to start doing a bit of Google research to see how much good they do. And you know, I would encourage everybody to support their local search and rescue charity, because the police can't do it all on their own, and there are times when there's an increased demand based on a certain situation. So yeah, good. Any more there?
Just one last one. It's kind of related, but one from Mike Melville. In a recent webinar, it was stated that construction sites were beginning to ban the use of DJI drones on their sites. What's the current situation in your view?
I would probably, I'll defer to you two guys because you're closer to it, but I think as far as construction sites, I wouldn't know that I've seen that being the case on construction sites, but
it's more critical infrastructure sites, especially when they are owned by, say, American owners. We have seen a couple of American-based companies restrict all Chinese drones, so it doesn't have to be just DJI. And with everything that's going on at the moment, with obviously data protection, we may see it happen in the future, but as a generalization, construction sites aren't, restricting the use of drones or Chinese drones at all. It's more they're encouraging them, social distancing, cheaper, faster, and safer.
I think.
If that, I mean, if that construction site was next to a RAF base or next to a nuclear power plant or a gas terminal, then it might be a different story. But yeah, for the most part, civilian stuff is fair game.
And we're drone agnostic, so we can take up quite middle ground here, and I think you've got to have a balanced view here. It's horses for courses. There's certain applications where there's strict criteria on where things are made and what their security details are, but there's equally many more where that's not an issue. So I think we have to have a balanced view here. Yeah. Is it any more there? Or that? Right. Well, I'll tell you one thing I want to talk about, which we don't always talk about, is that drones are not just used in the open, in the skies under civil aviation regulations. Confined spaces of all different types are massively benefiting from the use of robotics in all types, whether that be flying, crawling, swimming, and we've got two really good contrasts here. We've got the inspection side and also for public safety. So, George, do you want to start off with what are you seeing as far as confined space drone applications and news recently?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of follows sort of big stories in the UK in terms of inspection. I mean, to go back to the wind industry, even prior to installation, those turbine blades are actually being inspected with Helioses because the risk of putting a human into that confined space and getting right to the end can be quite dangerous, and it can be obviously quite time consuming. And it is just a case of getting in, photographing the essential parts, and then coming out. So if you can do that with a drone and limit and actually mitigate the risk of putting a human in there, brilliant. We'll crack on. But essentially, we've seen a huge, huge demand on culverts, something relatively simple to do with a drone, which has really started to be adopted all over the world, but especially in the UK. And it's a real game changer for a lot of companies, which would have to get a boat down or get a crawler. And some of these areas are really difficult to get into, difficult to inspect. They could have a lot of moisture in them, be a lot of debris in the way, and having a drone which can avoid that and get through is it's a real game changer. So the two biggest ones, again, wind sector and culvert inspection, it really is a no-brainer for some of these bigger companies, and even the smaller companies who are going to be doing it as freelance.
And culvert, as I understand it, because people mention culvert, is basically a big drain, isn't it?
Yes.
Carrying water under a railway or a road. Or
absolutely. Like essentially, just it can be anything from a small tunnel to the underpass of a bridge. That's essentially what it is, and it's a lot of the time it has free-flowing water coming through. So having somebody wade through can not only be dangerous but time-consuming. So flying a drone down it is it's the future.
Yeah. Okay. So, what about on the public safety side, Sam? What are you seeing regarding confined space use of drones?
Yeah, so to sort of frame it, we did do some trials with some of the same tools you'd use for the confined space inspection world, with police, with military, and what they found was it was a little bit too overt and a little bit too complex for their needs. There's loads of really cool features the Helios 2 has in terms of inspection, which is just unnecessary for police and the military. So we've partnered with a company called Sky Hero, who do a drone called the Loki, which is it's more of an internal tactical drone than a sort of confined space drone. But effectively, it's a sealed up unit, which is collision tolerant, which flies in GPS denied environments, has sensors so it'll hold its altitude and hold its location, but can effectively be thrown into buildings and flown around to clear a building before any individuals go in. There's a few other features, like it's got a night vision camera, so it can effectively see in the dark. It's got infrared beacons, so you can flip the drone over and obviously revert it if it flips over and you want to fly it. But you can use the beacon then as effectively an infrared beacon. So for military, there's ordnance applications to that. For police, there's flip it outside a door, the team goes in, that's the only door that's locked. This is where there might be someone we need to check out. There's also distraction devices that can be fitted to it, so it can sound like there's firearms going off, there's flashbangs, there's window breaking modules, all kinds of cool stuff that the police and the military can attach to this. Traditionally, they'd send in, say, a dog team, but a dog team can't tell you if there's someone there all the time. If you take out the emotional element of a dog getting hurt or worse, there's also the fact that dogs are way more expensive than drones.
How much does it cost to train it? I mean, let's not get. It will be. Nobody wants to see an animal injured or killed, worse. But how much does it cost?
It's tens of thousands, because you've also got the fact that the officer who trained that dog will live with that officer.
Yeah.
They will have to take off several months of leave if anything happens to that dog, either to look after it or to mourn it.
Yeah.
So having a drone that you can fly in, and the great thing with the Loki 2 is if one of them's smashed to pieces, absolutely smashed to pieces, you can replace the drone really easily and pair it with the controller. So
is it modular? Modularly replace certain parts?
Yeah, you can fix props, motors, everything on the job if you do smash it to pieces, and you can also pair up to 4 drones with one controller, so you can fly one and sentry it by a building, fly another one overlap it, sentry that by the door, and so on and so on.
Cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot you can do with it. We're just starting to get it out into the market, and I'm sure we'll have some interesting use cases.
Have you flown it?
Yeah, so we've done some demos with the Royal Marines. Really good feedback from them. Obviously, different applications from the more commercial world. And we've done a demo with West Yorkshire Police. We've flown it around one of their training rooms. We've used it to effectively clear a building. We knew there was a target in there they'd placed. I had to go and find the target, sit the drone down by it, and watch it while the team went in effectively. One of the times when we did that, we crashed the drone and it rolled down the stairs effectively. One of the props was cracked. We replaced it within about 2.5 minutes and got it back in the air straight away. So even with a really major rolling down 2 flights of stairs crash, it was a quick fix and we're up and going.
Great. Okay. One thing regarding confined spaces, and something quite close to my heart, and I've seen it's come more to the fore now recently, is gas detection systems put on drones. Now, there's stuff out from DJI, there's stuff out from FLIR. What are you seeing on that, George?
System, especially in the oil and gas and sort of utilities industry, is I don't know if you've seen the FLIR Move 360. So essentially, it goes on to the 210, which was obviously and it still is a really popular drone at the moment. But it allows you, and the fire brigade will also be looking into these a lot at the moment in the public sector side of things. But it's essentially a way to analyse and assess an area from a safe distance. So you're not having to put a team into an area that could potentially have a leak or potentially have harmful gases. You fly the drone in, and the fire brigade are doing this in the US at the moment. They're flying in and they're finding if these gases are flammable or dangerous to human beings before they send in a ground team. So they're able to do this from a safe distance and analyse, and it's up to, I think it's about 7 or 8 different chemicals that it can detect, from CO to oxygen, all the way through to any LEL, basically, which is a huge benefit to a lot of safety measure teams, especially on site.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something that I know a lot about. For 20 years, we had a business that provided gas detection solutions to the offshore and maritime industry. Now, I noticed one of its arrangements was a quad gas, which when it's quad gas, it measures 4 gases simultaneously. It measures oxygen, hydrogen sulfide, carbon monoxide, and, like you said, the LELs, hydrocarbon gases. And I think its standard is methane. Now, but people don't realise that in confined spaces, the amount of people that die is absolutely huge. What normally happens is in a tank entry is that 2 people go into a tank and they are supposed to measure the gas levels within the tank. So 2 people go down, and this is what happens so often on ships. And you could often say that the crews maybe are not as well trained on ships sometimes, but 2 people will go down in the tank. They might take a measurement at the entry entrance to the tank. When they get down to the bottom of the tank, the atmosphere has changed. And one of the most common things was that a tank will be sealed up, let's say in somewhere that was humid, and might not be open for another 12 months. Well, all that humid moisture vapor in the atmosphere then corrodes the tank. So what happens when in corrosion? Well, it eats oxygen. So you open the tank, the oxygen levels are dangerously low or almost non-existent. Person number one keels over. Person number two keels over. The guy that's at the top of the tank sees his two oppos keeled over, goes down to try and save them, and guy number three dies. But sometimes guy number three goes and raises the alarm. And it was on average 2 people a ship, 2 people per week on ship were dying. Ridiculous amounts. And that's just on ships, that's not the rest of the industry. So this is a great way forward. You know, there's also hydrogen sulfide, which smells like rotten eggs, hugely poisonous. Everybody knows about CO, the silent killer, that we get adverts in the home, and obviously the explosion effects of a hydrocarbon gas. So, and I believe we've got packages on that now anyway, aren't we?
Yeah, we do. And I mean,
so that's yeah.
As you say, it's obviously that hazmat response, but obviously inspection and compliance. But a big one is going to be the environmental monitoring as well.
Yeah.
So that you can obviously check for your compliance, etc., which is a huge one going into 2021.
It comes down as well to that. It's that statement of you should never put a man or woman into a dangerous situation when there is an alternative available.
Yeah.
There's no reason to.
Absolutely.
That's where public safety and inspection meet together, because it's the same as sending a drone in where someone might bonk it on the head or shoot it. It's much better that it's a drone than a person. Same with dangerous levels of gases. You shouldn't send them in if you don't have to.
Yeah. Hayley, do you have a question?
I've got 2 questions which are kind of the same. So Andrew's saying, what drone systems can be flown in known explosive atmospheres, and are they intrinsically safe? And also Jim Panton, is there a risk from sending a confined space drone into an area that has flammable gases in it?
Good questions. There was something that was touted for probably 3 years ago as a French drone, which it seems to have disappeared. It was increased safety rather than, there's no intrinsically safe drones or explosion-proof drones, but it had increased safety. But I don't think it still exists.
We're a good 5 years off the development of that being finalised.
It's going to have to be some
very
sort
difficult.
of different technology to do it. So a similar case was, for example, on ships and in oil refineries, where the people were using defibrillators if people had a cardiac arrest, that produces obviously a very strong electrical charge, and you can't make them intrinsically safe. But what was done there is that a risk assessment is taken based on the situation. Now, what you would find is that a drone will be used if there was a gas-free certificate issued, or it will be outside doing a perimeter type monitoring. So if it's picking up levels of gas, there's a leak somewhere, so you can go in further. And with some of the other the laser methane drone,
The U10
from DJI,
yeah,
that can basically point around a site and actually find where there's a methane
from 100
leak
meters
or-
away. So
yeah. So they're not suitable for each different type of application, but it could be picking up the fact that there's a leak on a site, but you're not going to send in a drone without a risk assessment in a hazardous area.
Same as you would send a person in though without risk assessment. So it's the same.
Yeah. And the confined space, regulations state that you should never send a person into a confined space if you can send. If there's a piece of equipment or automation to be able to send.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the intrinsic safety explosion-proof question is a is an old one, but we haven't solved it yet. Was there another one, Haley?
Not really related to inspection, but I can ask you a random question.
Go on then.
Wherever
Ask
you
me a
care
random
for.
one.
John West saying, is there the capability of streaming pictures from a drone over the web so that remote viewing can be achieved anywhere that there is an internet connection?
I can answer that from a public safety perspective. There's a few specific options they have that they use, so they have their own systems that they use. From just a commercial perspective, there's tons of stuff you can do. So the issue they have is they have to be super secure, whereas most people commercially don't quite have that issue. So in terms of live streaming, you can use stuff like Skype for Business. You can use stuff like YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and just have private channels. If you don't mind a second or two of latency because it's going up and down. Your other options are to have a HDMI out just into a module from something like a smart controller with a Mavic, for example. That can either go to like a mobile device, which then routes it, or you can have it wired into, say, a PC or a monitor. So there's a few different options you can use. I don't know if it's George, any you've come across, not mentioned, or?
I mean, essentially, DJI Flight Hub is also an option for if you've got, you know, a couple of different teams on the ground, and obviously with the emergency services as well as if you've got a central control center that you want to have somebody who's in control looking over each of the centers. It is a, you know, a valuable asset to have. So especially for the fire department to know that there was a really good case study put out where they were putting a drone up and the actual team leader was sat in the control station and he was able to ask drone 3 to circle back around and keep an eye on, you know, section B, or whichever was developing the most the fastest. But yeah, as you say, there's some cheaper alternatives, some easier ones to go by, but I definitely recommend having a look at DJI Flight Hub as a potential option.
And obviously, you're working with people on the more secure, well, say more secure, but specifically encrypted.
And that's more, yeah, and that's more stuff that will be accessible via, say, an app that's loaded onto every, I don't know, police officer's mobile device. They have a code they access and they can see live from the drone. The good thing with Flight Hub, though, as well, that's a good point, is that you can access all the drone's telemetry data as well. So if you're overseeing, say, 10 pilots, you could say, you know, pilot 3, your batteries are 27%, you need to start making your way back. Pilot 2, your firmware is outdated, all that kind of stuff. So there's more to Flight Hub as well than just the streaming.
I think Dejero is one that we work with, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So that's again a more sort of advanced option for sort of larger organisations. But yeah, that's definitely an option as well.
Okay, good. One other piece of news that I saw was that Audi now are using drones, using RFID technology to fly over their vast car parks of new cars to identify which cars are where and which ready for distribution. So have you guys come across any? It's probably more you, George, regarding the use of RFID in distribution centres, or have you seen drones be used in distribution centres?
Not so much on that specific topic, but we've seen, and it was actually with the use of Pix4D. They were able to fly over a car park, and they were actually able to estimate how many cars were in that single site.
Yeah.
And that was that they were able to monitor that and keep a record of individual cars.
Yeah.
And so you basically enable it with a tag, and then fly over it the same day, next day, and they were able to identify how long that car had been there. So if there was an event that it had been abandoned, or you know it was overstaying its permit, you can then investigate and go out and actually put someone on the ground rather than somebody going around and counting all the cars by hand, which you know is painstakingly depressing. You can stick a drone up and do it in a couple of minutes. Then you just have to go back to the office and tick them off. But yeah, I mean, in terms of that, it's an easy way of collecting large amounts of data from the air.
What about in distribution centres themselves, inside them?
In distribution centres, I mean, we're looking at the Helios 2, we're looking at you know, maintenance and inspection of any types of problems. But one of the big ones, and there's trials going on at the moment, is is actually barcode scanning and the ability to do stock takes. So we're seeing a couple of companies in the UK at the moment taking this on board to identify if stock should be where it is, if it shouldn't be. But instead of taking like a cherry picker or a bed stand, which obviously raises and lowers every time you want to do an inspection, you basically send a drone up and it record the whole section of paneling, and that gives you all of the barcodes to scan. That data then can be put into the post-processing software, and they can actually identify what's missing, what should be there, what shouldn't be. So it's just automating and making it easier and safer to do these simple jobs.
So it's a classic thing, that, isn't it? Using a cherry picker, forklift truck or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
It's faster, safer, cheaper than doing that traditional method.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Any more questions there?
We've got quite a few questions more around the change in training courses and the regulations. So we have someone saying, can you please explain the difference between the PIFCO and the GVC? And another was, is the GVC, does it cover night flying?
What we're going to do is, because this is a very big subject, we're going to get Dan, our head of training, to do a webinar and cover this whole topic, because I think that is something that's absolutely needed by, there's a lot of confusion here, and me trying to do little bits and pieces of it. So watch this space for Dan Wilson and probably Duncan Hewitson will be doing a webinar on this very subject soon, because it is coming up time and time again, and it's not altogether straightforward. So please watch your space on that one. One thing I've seen in the news quite a lot is, I think it's probably our final item, is swarming drones. Is there any application outside of entertainment and military? Is it just a gimmick? You know, where could it be used apart from that?
I think there's aspects of it. Anything that's at a military level gets civilianized to a point where it's usable for sort of police and law enforcement, and I think we'll probably see that. At the minute, it's not even being used officially widespread on the military level. So until it is, and then it filters its way down, I don't think we're going to see it. You know, so your local police force isn't going to be sending a swarm of drones up to cover an area, for example. So I think we might be a few years off that. There are some fairly obvious sort of law enforcement applications, but yeah, we're a few years off that yet, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't particularly see where it's going to go on swarming, because I just don't see it outside of the replacing fireworks. But you know, there's a big argument that the return on investment on that is huge. I suppose if you use something like this on the Loki with the bands,
yeah,
you could actually make it. I think fireworks without bangs is something wrong there.
Yeah.
So have we got any more questions, or should we? I think we're out of new questions now, guys. Thank you very much for joining us this month. See you next time. Bye.
Yeah.